Let's just get into this. This is going to be episode number 10 of the Beginner to Master Speedrun. Unlike previous episodes, I'm live streaming on Twitch. YouTube can say hi to the Twitch chat. Maybe Twitch chat can say hi to the future YouTube audience. Welcome to everyone tuning in the present and in the future, maybe the past as well. So the goal today is to keep raising the rating. Coming in rated 829. And hopefully we'll have a bunch of instructive games. I have updated my profile picture to a new, slightly older version of myself. And let's waste no more time. Let's get into it. Playing Lancers 309. Now the danger is, because I'm streaming this live, it's possible I could be playing a viewer. And, okay. First game gets aborted. Oh no. Okay. Playing a Bazowski from the country of Indonesia. Selamat pagi. I think it's morning there. Let's play d4, d5. And yeah, most of the games I've played in the speedrun feature e4, so this is a bit different. Knight c3 is not the most popular move. More often, people play the Queen's Gambit. Sometimes when people play Knight c3, it's a sign that they'll play Jobava London. Bishop g5 is also playable. Lichess is calling this the Trempowsky, or chess.com is calling this the Trempowsky attack. I think this has another name, though, too. Maybe like a Verisov. So against this move, like one of the points for white is white's threatening to take and then try and double my pawns. If I play e6, then the knight's pinned. So the move I like to play here is knight to d7. And even though it blocks a queen, my knight on f6 still defends a pawn. And of course, if takes, then I can take back with the knight. And I got the two bishops, and I'm not damaging my structure. And from here, life will go on. I do want to castle, hopefully pretty soon. But if I play e6, then it blocks a bishop. So I think I'm happy to play bishop f5 here. And then the idea is e6 and bishop d6 and castle. And that will actually kind of be a reverse London, where, I mean, the London system is basically this, except I don't have a knight coming here. Bishop b5 check. Okay, happy to play c6. I have noticed like a lot of beginners sometimes like to throw in this check. Sometimes you get the dopamine rush of attacking your opponent's king, but in that case, it didn't really do much. My pawn is happy to be here. Wow, g4. So I can't take it because it's supported by the queen bishop battery. Like here, it's a choice between bishop e4 or bishop g6. I think I just want to drop back. Don't want to play this and allow white to take away my bishop. But white's playing very aggressively. With h4, white is threatening to play h5 and then eventually trap the bishop. So I do have to be careful. The two ways to deal with this are h5 or h6. I think both moves are pretty acceptable. h5 is a bit more confrontational. Like I would allow the exchange, which I think is okay actually. If h5, it also allows g5, but then knight can move back. I'll go for h5. And this might be the strongest player I've played in like this whole speedrun series. So I don't think I've played anyone over 1,000 yet. And they have not made any like obvious mistakes. Like, maybe some subtle inaccuracies like trading the bishop early on. This whole expansion, it's hard to punish right away. And it really imbalances the position. But I'm just trying to be solid. I'll play bishop to d6, completing the so-called London like triangle setup. Wow, so white castles into the side where the pawns have already advanced. And this is a move which I'd imagine should be punishable. But it's still a question like how to orchestrate an attack on the king side. Like I could kind of poke and prod with f6. I'm not sure if f6 really threatens much. Another idea is to like play e5, either now or maybe play queen e7 and eventually play e5. I'm really just looking for my options first of all. Like if I play e5 first, there's takes and takes and takes and takes, and we're trading. The very end there, maybe white plays f4. I don't think I'm getting that much. So I'm going to play queen e7 kind of as a multi-purpose move. On one hand, I'm giving more support to e5, but I'm also preparing to castle queenside, and then hopefully connect the rooks. We see bishop d3. That's actually a reasonable move. Because if I allow takes, I have to take back with the pawn. I think this is a time to calculate a little bit. Because I would really like to get an e5. And if takes takes, maybe it's not so bad. Like take and then take and then take and then take. I'm threatening mate. If f4 there, I can take with check. Yeah, I think I'll go for this. It is maybe a bit unnatural to allow my pawns to be doubled in a situation where I take away from the center. But I like the prospect of just opening up the lines. Like if the F and E files open, and eventually I would like to castle and just exert maximum pressure on the files. But white plays E4, wow. So it's getting spicy. Yeah, my opponent's not afraid to spice things up. I mean, the first move that comes to mind is taking. I have to watch my time too. Taking would attack the knight. And if takes back, then I have this move, threatening mate. And there's also takes, takes, and takes. Let's start with this. I do have to be careful that my queen and king are aligned on a file that is very likely to be open very soon. So like if I do take, white could probably take, take, take. And if I take with queen, there's rook e1 in the very end, which makes me more inclined to like castle quickly. If I play this move, it looks good attacking the knight and mate, but then there's knight f3. So maybe I'll take once. Just relieving the tension. I'm not going to take 2 more times. But depending what white does, I might castle next. And queen e5 still could be an option. Down about 3 minutes on the clock. A very interesting game so far. I mean, white has options here. I was going to say rook e1 was maybe possible. But we see bishop e2, so I think my opponent didn't see the tactical idea with rook e1. And now, I mean, queen e5, how does white defend? Oh, let's do it. Like moments like this, with my time getting low, I just want to try and keep the pressure. And then think on my opponent's time. I think the best try for white is to play f4. And then I can en passant. But it's not winning because, okay, well now it's winning because checkmate. I should show though that it could have been still tricky, like f4, I would take, knight would take, queen g3. It does look good for black, but I don't think there's any obvious win because knight defends h2. So maybe it's possible f3 was a mouse slip. Probably more likely my opponent just didn't realize a threat. So, I mean, my opponent definitely played like a very interesting game. I would say they're underrated for the way they played. Going forward, I think more common in this opening, at least stronger players who I played against will play f3 and then e4. A more direct way of trying to challenge the center. And then later, yeah, all of this was interesting. I mean, e4 was especially like super spicy. Thank you for the raid. Risk GMO Olive. But yeah, I think this position white should have taken. And then just to show if takes, I can't really go into this because my queen gets lost. So I think the plan, like if white did this, maybe I would take once and then play queenside castle. Oh, but then knight here. Ooh. So maybe I would queenside castle immediately. Or maybe I would just blunder and then lose. Who knows? Anyway, nice game to start the episode. So yeah, let's move on. Playing JN something. And I've been sticking with a lot of similar openings so far this series. D3, it's a playable move, not the most active move. It does kind of shut in the bishop. Generally in these king pawn openings, you want to develop the bishop and then form the pawn chain. Here it looks like white's trying to play some kind of like king's pawn version of the London, except this bishop is going to be stuck. And generally f3 is not a great move, especially because it allows the bishop to pierce through the position. And yeah, generally in king's pawn openings, a knight does like to develop here. But with knight e2, I'm looking for ways to punish white's play like as quickly as possible. But I think the best way to quote unquote punish white is just to follow principles. Like just develop naturally, control the center, likely going for d5 very soon. In this position, that's actually an interesting move. Yeah, in this position, I'm going to take a pawn. I think I'll explain this move in just a moment. Oh, my queen! Oh no. Okay. Is that the first oh no my queen of the speedrun? I should note that like doing the speedrun series, I don't really want to go for like dubious play to try and trick my opponent. But in this position, knight takes e4, I think is actually the best move. Because it threatens mate and threatens the bishop. And yeah, white's in big trouble here because if knight's taken, I take the bishop and I win a pawn in the process. Let me just check this with the engine real quick. Yeah, we have the eval bar. But yeah, knight takes e4 is actually a pretty clean tactic. So hope people enjoy this one. It's a pretty typical pattern. This is one example of what we call Laclede's mate. See people mentioning it in Twitch chat, where you do give away the queen, but you create the mate threat. And yeah, here white probably should have taken the knight, but life was still very, very good. There are cases, though, I should explain that, like, there's some cases where white will have this knight developed, and let's say this is a position. Then here, knight takes e4 is actually not a good move for black, even though I could still say, oh no, my queen, someone call an ambulance, and then not for me. But the reason why knight takes e4 is not good here is because knight takes defends a bishop, and then I just lose a piece. So anyway, hopefully this enlightens players who haven't seen this before or need a refresher. But let's move on to another game. Playing Marco Schultheis. I'll play e4. And we have a Scandi. Yeah, Scandi is definitely a popular opening at lower levels, even at higher levels. More common is queen takes d5. Knight f6 is also a very playable move. And in this position, like there's a few approaches for white. I could try and hold on to the pawn, but then there's some weird gambits which allow black to like develop pretty rapidly. So I'm just gonna play the, I think, most traditional, most natural move, pawn d4. The aim is to control the center, get ready to develop my bishops. And here I'll start with knight to f3. And very often, especially when the knight takes, then I can expand with c4, control space, and gain time on the knight. I think there's no reason to wait, play c4 right away. And it is kind of refreshing having a different type of opening, because so many games in the speedrun have been like king's pawn opening and a lot of like just early mistakes with opponents bringing out their queen early. But this is something a little bit new. And the same opening principles still apply. Like I want to develop my minor pieces as quickly as possible, control the center, castle quickly. And black has now moved the knight 1, 2, 3 times. So being a little bit inefficient with development, but there's been no major mistakes from black thus far. Yeah, so we see bishop to g6. And it is actually a question here, like how to proceed with development, because there's a lot of natural developing moves. I think a lot of players would play bishop d3, which does aim to castle. I'm going to play bishop e2, which may seem a little bit more passive, but there's a few reasons for having the bishop on e2 rather than d3. Like on d3, it blocks a queen from defending the pawn, which can sometimes be a target, like with black potentially having a lot of attackers. And then also on d3, it would just stare into this pawn chain, which is super solid for black. So I'd rather the bishop kind of preemptively deal with this bishop g4 move. Like if black tries to pin, it's not actually a pin. Black is applying a bit of pressure against the pawn. But there's only 2 attackers. I have 2 defenders, so black can't win the pawn right away. And in this position, like I think the most natural approach would be something like bishop e3 or bishop f4. I would like to play bishop e3, but then there's this move knight g4, which I don't think I want to deal with. Not to mention there's many cases where bishop g4 can happen. I should note here, there's a move d5, which would kick away the knight. But sometimes playing d5 will eventually be met with e6, which the pawn is a bit overextended there. So I'm going to play a move here, which maybe seems a little bit slow, but it's very restrictive. It prevents bishop g4, and it prepares to play this without allowing knight g4. And I'm trying to deprive this bishop of a good square. We see e5, okay, so this might be the first big mistake, but e5 might be playable too. I mean, there's 2 moves that immediately come to mind. Of course I can take, and it wins a pawn because I have 2 attackers, only 1 defender. If I take on e5 though, black will take. I'll take. And then knight d7. I might lose a pawn back. If I take with knight, then like there's knight takes d4, even queen takes d4. I'm taking a moment here. I'm liking this move d5 now. So it basically forces the knight to move, and then I can take. Let's go for this. This could get a little bit tricky, because when I take the pawn, then my knight's undefended and the bishop will be aligned. There might be some discoveries. I think it should be okay. Oh, we see the counterattack. Yeah, so with this, both knights are hanging. I can make the first capture. I can imagine for a lot of players this would be kind of complicated to calculate. But very simply, we can imagine takes, I take back. I'll win a pawn and then support the c-pawn. I mean, if queens get traded, I don't mind getting the rook to the open file. So I think this is pretty clean. I mean, the position is transforming a lot. Oh, someone was asking what if black pushes a pawn, presumably to e4, so we are seeing what happens. Briefly considering this move, but that would not be advisable. Let's take the queen. So things have been traded. And now there's this tension. Yeah, so recapture the pawn. And I'm only up a pawn here. It's a 3-on-2 majority. With the rook coming here, my pawn is a bit tied down. My bishop's tied down to defending the pawn. So still a lot of work to be done. I don't want to play a move like b3, which weakens the diagonal. Even though it might be interesting to consider. There's an idea here which I'm really drawn to. Like, I did just say my bishop's tied down to defending the pawn. But I could move the bishop and make a pretty big threat. Yeah, let's do this. Allowing black to take the pawn. At first, maybe it looks like I'm just trying to win this pawn, which I guess in this case, maybe I am. I was also going to say that bishop c5 was threatening to trap this rook. And actually, I can't take the pawn right away because takes... I really don't want to give up the two bishops for a rook. But I probably don't mind trading. And I'm going to be super safe. I'll just play rook b1. Holding on to the pawn. I'm also getting off the diagonal, so like very soon I'll probably like to play b3. And a position like this, like as we're simplifying and white's up a pawn, I just want to be solid. Watch my clock. Like sometimes the first thing to pay attention to is what does the opponent want to do? What are the potential weaknesses in my position? But I also still want to exploit weaknesses in black's position. I like the idea here of knight a4. Knight could find a nice square on c5. Also combines well with the bishop. And this is a very stable construction. Yeah, let's just keep going for trades. This move, I'm essentially forcing the trade of knights. I have seen like a few comments over the course of the speedrun episodes. Not really people complaining, but I think people saying that there hasn't been so much endgame instruction. Like with a lot of the games, I win out of the opening or middle game. But this game is already getting into the endgame. So hopefully there will be some endgame lessons to provide here. And I'll try and show like an instructive way how to convert an extra pawn. Now tactics are still relevant, and my opponent actually just walked into a pin, which I think I'm happy to exploit. Like this move f4, pretty straightforward. You always have to watch out for the check, but then I just take it. It's important that my rook's defended here. Yeah, sometimes like even in endgame, you just want to be patient, put your pieces on good squares. And that was not much of an endgame, unfortunately. Did I jinx it? Still a nice game though. It goes to show that like patience is key. I think my opponent maybe didn't quite know what to do here, tried to make things complicated, but e5 I think made life a bit easier for me. It's possible that my opponent should have played 97. And I wasn't sure about this variation because like if I take on e5, black could take on d5. As a nice way of like winning back the pawn and then attacking my undefended knights. And maybe this would just be a big trade and then life goes on. So, okay, making progress. Rated 862. If anyone in Twitch chat has questions about the game so far or about life in general, I could take a small break. Does h3 weaken the king side in the long run? There's cases where, yeah, like moving the pawn in front of the king can sometimes create weaknesses. In this case, not really. Like h3 has way more benefit. And like in the long run, it's usually a useful move because it gives Luft to my king and just takes away the square. Sometimes if you have like h3 and you don't have a pawn on f2, like if the pawn's gone or committed to f3 or f4, then it can weaken g3. But this structure is still like very, very solid. But if I play a move like g3, this could be a bit more weakening because of the light squares. Allows for bishop h3. So yeah, very often you have to ask yourself like what the weak squares could be. Or whenever you move a pawn, you should ask yourself like, are you weakening anything and can the opponent exploit it? Okay, doing one more. At least one more. Playing Death Plays. Oh, okay. This is an opening I've been getting used to recently. Oh, but my opponent's not playing bishop c4. I wonder if that was a mouse slip. Maybe they want to take and still like exploit the pawn. That's interesting. I mean, I could play g6 because the pawn's defended. I would attack the queen. But I think here, like because white's not threatening checkmate, it just makes sense to develop. Like bring out the knight, attack the queen, attack the pawn, not giving white time to take. And now I can keep the initiative. I'll play knight d4, attacking a bunch of different targets. And the queen is tied down to defending both the pawn and the bishop. So this is a case where we can say the queen is overworked. And if I want to, I guess I have to think about this though, because if I take the bishop, and then white takes back, I take the pawn, then I'm not actually winning anything because white's going to win the e-pawn. If I take here and take and then take and then take, yeah, maybe I'm not winning anything. So there's another idea here. Like rather than trying to like trade and exploit the overworked queen, there's an idea to just accelerate development and expand in the center. Yeah, I'm going to play c6, which maybe looks counterproductive because I'm allowing the bishop to move somewhere where it won't be attacked by the knight. The main idea is I want to play this move pawn d5. The other main idea was I was attacking the bishop, and now I'm happy to win the bishop with a knight, and I save my knight from the pawn. And that was a very quick 6-move win. Still maybe a couple lessons to take away. Like don't bring out your queen early. in this manner if you want to play like principal chess. But then the point I wanted to make is wherever the bishop was going to move, like let's say bishop c4, the plan was to play d5, and I really wanted to remove this pawn, not with intention of taking back, but with intention of bishop f5. And then the queen would be exploited, have another piece in play. The queen moves anywhere, I take on c2. So hopefully another lesson to take away, how to punish such an opening. Anyway, I think I'll wrap the episode up here for YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow on Twitch. If you like the content, subscribe on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe for free. Easy way to support the channel. Get some perks in the Twitch chat. Also, Twitch chat says hi, maybe. Twitch chat says great explanation. Bye YouTube. Episodes exclam. Okay, now some people say hi. Yeah, till next time.